tiny friends. Welcome back to Tiny Keyhole Minis. I'm Jolene, and today I am working in the Josephine house. I'm trying to finish up this hallway, so I'm going to be aging the walls and creating some curtains. One of the techniques I'll be doing today is just an illusion, but it's pretty simple, and I've done this on a couple of the other walls in the house. So the first thing I like to do is find an area where I want to peel back the wallpaper. This wallpaper is pretty old, so it was easy to peel back. But if you're using fresh paper to wallpaper your walls, you can easily make it look like the wallpaper is peeling and apply this as you're putting up your paper. Some of the wallpaper was already peeling, and then others I had to just use a little bit of water to dampen it and peel it back. I like to take a piece of scrap paper. I'm going to use graph paper, but you don't have to. Just use a piece of scrap paper. And I'm going to create a template. So I want to make sure that the wallpaper is pushed back as far as it'll go, just so it's out of the way when I lay down this scrap paper to create a template. And I'm just going to lay it right over the area and kind of crease it and then just trace it out. I can feel where the wallpaper edge is and where the border of the wall is, and I'm just tracing over the area where the bare wood is, where there's no wallpaper. So once I get this traced out, I am going to draw a little outside of my traced area just to be on the safe side. So I made it just a little bit bigger. I'll have to trim it down later, but it'll make the piece easier to work with. And I just want to create what looks like the support beams behind the wallpaper. So I'm going to use some chipboard. This is from a cracker box. Use what you have in your pantry. Pasta box, cereal box, any type of chipboard. If you have a thicker cardstock, use that. You don't need to use wood. This works just fine. Most of us have it in our household. And it's just a good way to recycle or repurpose something we would throw away. So I'm just going to create some lines going all the way down the space that I traced out. Now, I'm making my lines a little bit skinnier, but when I go over this again, I'm actually going to make them a little wider. So you don't want to make them as thin as I'm making them right now. And I'll show you about the width you want to go with after I realized I had made these ones too skinny. But I'm just making some stripes all the way down and cutting this piece out. Now you could cut it out after you apply the color, after this whole process. I don't know why I cut this piece out first. I think I just got ahead of myself, but it would make it easier to just apply the color while it's still attached to the larger piece. I'm going to take a black Sharpie and I'm just going to go over my lines. But since I made them a little skinny, I'm going to skip every other line so that my boards can be a little wider. And you'll see about the width that you want to go with. You don't want to make them too skinny. And I'm not making them straight. I'm not going to cut them straight. So you don't have to make them perfectly straight. They look better if you don't. So this is an easy peasy, no stress kind of project. So once I've got my black lines, I'm going to color with a little bit of brown. I'm using antique wax, but you can use regular brown, and I'm just kind of dry brushing a very little on just to give it a little color, and I'm not covering the chipboard completely. I still want the natural chipboard color along with this brown, and it'll give it a couple different tones. Once I got my dark brown on, I'm going to go over it with a lighter brown or maybe a beige or cream color just to give it some highlights. And I'm only hitting a few spots here and there. I'm not doing every board and I'm not doing a lot. I'm doing a very little bit of dry brushing. So my brush is very dry. This will just give it a little bit of highlights. And now I'm going to cut out my pieces. Now this is important, and I didn't pay attention to this, but you might want to do that. When you cut your pieces out, you might want to lay them down in order to how you cut it so that you don't get confused and that you can still have the layout of your template. So don't do what I'm doing. Each piece you cut, you want to lay it down and put it in the order that you're going to need to glue it to the wall. It'll be less confusing and you won't get lost or get your pieces mixed up. Now it's really not going to matter too much on this one because I do have to trim them down anyways. So I just kind of guesstimated how, once I realized what I did, I just kind of guesstimated how I thought they went into order. So it wasn't, I'm sure it wasn't accurate, but in the end, it looks fine on the wall. So just make sure to lay your pieces down in order as you cut them so you don't get confused. This is a pretty simple shape, but for my other walls, they were a little more of a complicated shape. So I would definitely suggest keeping them in order as you're cutting them. Okay, so I went ahead and painted the area that I'm going to cover, and I painted it black. Now, I didn't cover it completely. I just kind of painted it quickly so it's not covered totally, and you can see some of the spots that I've missed, but that's okay. You don't have to be accurate for this. You just want that black background. It's going to be the space in between the boards. The boards are going to cover up most of it, and I'll go over it again once I get all the boards on. So you just kind of want a base of black on your bare wall. I'm going to start with one piece at a time. I'm just dry fitting it so that I can make a little crease where I need to trim it. And then I'm going to trim it down and fit it into place. So again, I'm doing this one board at a time, and I'm just using tacky glue, and I'm gluing it right into place. I'm making sure that I'm not gluing it on the wallpaper, that I'm only gluing it to the bare wall or your wood. So you don't want to glue this to your wallpaper. And now I'm just going to proceed with the next piece. And I am leaving a space in between each board. The spaces are not all going to be exact. Some are going to be a little wider than others, and that's what makes it a little more realistic. And you can see my pieces are not all even, but I am going to try to lay them out as accurate as I can to fill the space that I've traced out. So I'm just making some adjustments to each piece as I'm laying them down, and then I'm moving the wallpaper out of the way if need be. I kind of want the boards to look like they're going underneath that wallpaper. So I'm kind of butting them right up to the edge of that wallpaper. And the wallpaper will look kind of like it's laying over the edge of the boards. For the bottom board, I made it a little skinnier than the others, so it looks like just the top of the board is showing and the rest is hidden underneath the wallpaper. Now I'm going back in to fill those spaces in between the boards with a little more black, and I'm going to begin to layer the colors. So after the black, I'm going to go over the paper with a watered down brown. I'm just going over the back side of the wallpaper where you see it's all white. And I'm also going to go over the boards with the remaining paint that's left over on my brush. Once that's dry, I'm just going to add a little bit of tacky glue right around the edge of the boards close to the wallpaper, and then just press the wallpaper over on the boards. Now I'm not gluing the wallpaper completely. I'm just putting a little bit right in that edge just so that the wallpaper can lay down a little more over the boards but still look like it's peeling off. So I'm going to let this dry for a little bit, and then I'll peel back the areas that aren't glued down. I'm going to use chalk pastels to continue on with the aging, and I'm using 3 different colors. I'm going to use brown, an orangish yellow, and then kind of like a sienna or a brick color. And I'm just going to layer these colors on as I go. I'm going to push back as much of the wallpaper that I can that isn't glued down to the boards. And you can see there's a lot of black on the wallpaper, and that was from when I painted the border. So I kind of want to cover up that black as much as I can. So I'm going to begin with the yellowish color. It's kind of like an orangish yellow or a bright yellow. And I'm going to apply some water to my brush. Adding water to your chalk pastels will brighten up the contrast of the color. So I like to do both. So while I'm doing this process, sometimes I'll be adding water to my brush. Sometimes I'll just be using the chalk pastels dry without any water. So right now I've got my brush wet and I'm applying that bright yellow, and I'm just going around this area. Now I kind of want to go a little heavier on the coloring for this wall because of the leak that's in the ceiling above this wall, and it's probably coming from the pipes that are sitting behind the wall or in the wall. So that's why I'm going to go a little bit heavier on the coloring with this wall. After I apply the yellow, I'm going in with a little bit of the brown, and I'm just going to keep switching the colors, and this is just a process of layering the different colors. So I'm just going to do it around this area, and then I'm going to begin to go around the wall, and I'll just continue to layer with the different colors. I'm not going to go as heavy with the coloring on the back wall where the window is. I'm only doing that with this wall because of the leak. Okay, tiny friends, that part is over, and I'll give you a quick view of what the walls look like now. And you can see the back wall isn't as dark as this front wall. That's how I would normally age throughout the house, but I felt like this front wall needed a little bit more because of that leak. Now I'm going to make some curtains for that back window. I've made a few curtains in the past, but today I'm going to use a technique that I saw on Little Gretchen's workshop. And I'm going to kind of follow Gretchen on how she makes her curtains because it looks really fun. If there's anybody watching this that does not know of Little Gretchen's workshop, please check out her channel. You'll fall in love. You'll just fall in love. I'll put a link in the description box below to her previous curtain video. Normally I would use a rod, but I'm going to go ahead and use this wooden bracket brace that I made. And I created this cardboard backboard, and it's just wrapped with packing tape. Another method that I got from my tiny friend, Gretchen. This fabric that I'm using is a vintage high quality fabric, and it has a beautiful lace trimming. So I'm going to go ahead and use it. Now, Gretchen makes gorgeous, gorgeous curtains, very fancy and beautiful draping. Fortunately for me, I don't need to make my curtains as fancy and beautiful, not for this old farmhouse. So they're not going to look as beautiful as hers, but I really wanted to try her way of making curtains since I have not yet. And like I said, it just looked super fun. I don't know how big I need to make my panels. So what I'm going to do is make each panel the length of the board, because in my head, I'm estimating half of it for draping and scrunching up. My wood bracket is about 3 inches long. It sits perfectly outside of the window frame. And I'm going to leave a space open in the middle because there are already shades on the window. Now, I did do something similar to this for the kitchen window, but I just used a valance. It does have a wood, kind of a wood bracket similar to this, and I built a shelf to sit on top of it. Now, I'm going to measure how long I need my panels to be. I don't want them to go all the way down to the floor, so I'm just going to measure about 7 inches down. I've measured the placement on my window, and that will leave them to hang down just above the baseboards. I'm going to go ahead and trim down the excess fabric on both of my panels. So they're going to measure to be 3 inches wide by 7 inches in length. I'm sure everybody's curtains are going to vary according to their window length and where their window is sitting and how long you want your curtains to be. You might just want them to go down to the windowsill. So I really can't say follow these measurements. Just go accordingly to your windows and how long you want your curtains to be. So now I'm going to go ahead and create a hem on both sides. I'm only doing 2 sides, and I'm just going to create a small seam. I don't need to create one on the bottom, and I don't need to create one on the top because that's going to be covered by the valance. Right now, I'm just snipping the corners off so it relieves some of the bulk when I create my seam. I'm using liquid stitch for my seams, but you can use tacky glue, you can use fabric tack, you can use another type of fabric glue or white PVA glue if you don't have any liquid stitch. So don't worry about that. Other glues work just as well. Okay, I got my panels prepared, and I also made a seam along the top part of my valance and on the sides of my valance. So I did 3 sides for my valance, and it measures double the length of my bracket, so it's about 6 inches long and about 1.5 inches wide total from the top to the bottom of the trimming. My panels are 3 inches wide and 7 inches in length. Okay, for my draping solution, I am going to use fabric stiff. It's very thin. I have it on hand. You do not have to use fabric stiff. You can use watered down glue. I use watered down glue as well, and I continue to use it, and I like using it, but my preference is the fabric stiff for something like this. Go with your preference or what you have. If you're using glue, you probably want 1 part glue to 3 parts water. The more glue you put on, the harder it's going to be, and it's going to look like it was saturated with glue. So you don't need too much. You don't want it dripping and soaking with the glue solution. And this will be the same way you can drape blankets and bedding as well. I'm using my sewing pins, and I'm starting at the top, and I'm just creating some creases and wrinkles and folds. I don't need them to be perfectly pleated, and I don't want them to be perfectly pleated. So I'm not really thinking too hard about this. But this is something that you don't want to rush through, so definitely take your time to get your curtains to look the way you want them to look. If you want those beautifully draped curtains that are very fancy, then take your time and don't rush it. I'm going to just pull it down towards the bottom, and that'll create some more folds. Just kind of straighten it up a little bit, and then I'm going to start to pin the bottom. So I'm just playing around for the most part, and the type of fabric that I'm using is very fitting for this. I like the way it feels, and it just kind of falls where you want it to fall. So again, I just need mine to look like they're draping. They don't need to be fancy. I had to work on my panels one at a time because I've been on baby duty for the last 2 weeks. So that is why you see me doing one panel in the middle and not both of them together. So you might want to do your panels together, but for me it wasn't an option. So I already have one panel completed, and this is the next day. I am going to let them dry overnight, and also you want to make sure your seams are pretty dry before you start adding a watered solution to them, or they might come apart. So make sure your seams are completely dry. I'm not using a lot of the fabric stiff because with fabric stiff, you do not need a lot. And I'm not doing the whole valance at once. I'm doing a section at a time. And I'm also using the wooden bracket as a guide. So now I'm taking my pins and I'm just beginning to make some creases and folds in my valance. And although I did not need to be super fancy with these curtains, I still did take my time. Even though it looks like I'm rushing through this, this is edited and I have sped up the speed on this to double time for the video's sake. So it does look like I'm rushing through it. It does look like I am not taking my time, but I really did take my time to do this. So make sure to keep in mind how you want your curtains. Look at some photos, some references, and take your time while doing this. This is actually really fun, and you can play around with it and shape your curtains however you would like them to be. I have used a watered glue solution in the past, or a draping solution for my curtains, and I have used it on fabrics for draping blankets. And I have learned that when you do use too much, it is definitely a hard, crisp piece of fabric, and it doesn't look as natural. It just looks really hard and stiff, and it doesn't feel as natural. So lesson learned, note to take, less is more when you're working with a draping solution. But the good thing is, if that happens to you, you can always soak your piece of fabric in some warm water to release the glue and soften it up and start all over again. So it doesn't have to be a permanent situation. I'm just finishing up pinning up my valance. I'm going to let this dry overnight and come back to it. Okay, so my curtains are dried. I'm going to pull out my pins. I'm going to talk a little bit about this. One of the reasons why I love using fabric stiff is look how pliable it is. It's very flexible. I'm able to open them up just a little bit more and stretch them out a little bit to make them slightly wider. It just kind of relaxes the fabric and releases the tension on them so that they have a little more of a natural drape, I guess you would say to them. So they would lay a little more naturally. So I'm pulling out the pins, and the one thing I don't like about using pins on the fabrics when you're doing a draping is that they leave pinholes. So if anybody has a better solution to this, please let me know. Am I sticking the pins in too far? Should I not be putting them through the fabric? The good thing is they're so tiny, you're not going to see them. So now I have a valance that's kind of like a little accordion, and I have loosened it up a little so it's a little more relaxed. I'm going to trim it slightly just to even out the top a little bit more so they can lay a little more evenly on the bottom. Now I'm going to use tacky glue to attach these to the wood, and I'm going to use an excessive amount of tacky glue for my panels. And I'm really sorry, Gretchen, if this is triggering. I know that you're working really hard on your glue situation. And for those of you that are also working hard on not using an excessive amount of glue, I apologize now, but I don't have a problem with that. Well, I might, but it doesn't bother me. So I'm using an excessive amount because I really want these to stick, and they're kind of bulky at the top where they're all folded and bunched together. So you do have to kind of use a good amount. And I'm just pulling it over the sides and making sure that it covers the side of my bracket. I'm lining it up evenly with the top and evenly with the back, so when I glue it to the wall, the fabric won't interfere with that. Now I need to hold it for a few minutes, but I'm going to end up using my clips and just clipping the panels to the board until they really set in and take a good grip. So now I like to take the opportunity to thank you, Gretchen, for sharing your draping technique and how you create your curtains with everybody. It is really super fun, and I'm enjoying making my curtains this way, so I probably will continue to do this. Tiny friends, if you're not familiar with Little Gretchen's workshop, I'm going to fall over on the floor right now. No, just kidding. Yeah, I would be shocked. But if you are not familiar with Little Gretchen's workshop, please check out her channel. If you haven't seen how Gretchen creates her curtains, click the link in the description box below, and don't forget to subscribe if you are not already subscribed. So right now I'm just using my fabric tack to fix this little piece of trimming because I accidentally clipped too much and it came detached from the curtain. So I'm just gluing that back into place. You'll never know it happened. Now I am going to use the fabric tack to attach the valance, and that is because the fabric tack is super quick and it's a thick glue. It grips really fast, and it's definitely going to do the job in a fast pace. It's a quick worker. So since the valance is a lot of bulk and the panels are bulky, I think that the fabric tack is going to be a better choice for me. But you can still use your tacky glue or your white glue or any other fabric glue for this. I'm just choosing the fabric tack because I know that it is up for the job. So I'm going to apply an excess amount. You might want to close your eyes for this part. Now I'm pulling my valance around the side as well, and I'm just lining it up with the back of the board and the rest of the fabric. I want to make sure it doesn't interfere with the wall when I'm attaching the board to the wall. And I'm just making some adjustments as I'm going along. One of the reasons why I do like using fabric stiff is that even after the fabric is dried, it still lets you shape your fabric. So you can reshape it or make changes to your shape or draping. And I really like that it gives you that opportunity. It's just more of a flexible solution. So right now, I'm just making some adjustments and just fixing my creases and folds while the fabric tack glue is still wet. So I'm just moving my fabric around and just shaping it how I want it to lay. Okay, so I think I'm pretty happy with this, tiny friends, and this is what my curtains look like. Now I'm going to do one last thing before attaching them to the window, and that is dulling down this stark white color because they look brand new, and I can't have brand new curtains in the Josephine house. So I am using a soft yellow chalk pastel, and I'm going very lightly because I don't want big yellow stains. I just want a hint of color just to tone down the white a bit and say, you know what, these curtains are old and maybe they could use a wash. Maybe they've been up on that window for a little longer than they should be. Or maybe Miss Margot hasn't washed them in a very long time. So I'm just using a little bit of yellow to bring down that white. I am not covering it completely. I know I say that a lot, but I'm really not. I'm just going into areas and just bringing down most of that white. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. I'm not sure how much you can tell on camera, but it did do a good job at dulling down that white. So now I'm going to go install these curtains, and I'm going to use tacky glue to glue them into place. I like them. I think they look very fitting for the hallway. They're not fancy. They're not extremely old and dirty, but you can see here a little bit of the coloring. And I think that these were a good choice for this window. I really like the way they look in the hallway. So I'm happy I chose this fabric and that I went with Gretchen's method from Little Gretchen's workshop. I hope you all enjoyed this video today. If so, please give it a thumbs up and click that like button and let me know what you thought about these curtains in the comments below. As usual, I like to thank you all for subscribing to my channel and welcome to all my new subscribers. Thank you all for coming along with me on my miniature journey. I have so much fun sharing everything with you all. If you are just viewing today, please consider subscribing to my channel if you would like to see more of my miniature projects. And please don't forget to hit that top bell notification button to be notified every time I upload a new project so you don't miss out. I'll be coming back with part 2 of the portraits to finish up this hallway and also putting up that banister and stair railing. So until next time, tiny friends, you all have a lovely day, and I will see you all on the mini side. Bye-bye.